Let the word go forth.
Fool me once.
Are you fired up?
I'm not a crook.
Are you ready to go?
Shame on you.
It's Abe Lincoln's Top Hat, hosted by Ben Kissel.
Fool me, can't get fooled again.
All right, welcome to the show, everyone. I am Ben Kissel, joined by Marcus Parks. As always, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, Ben. How are you?
I am good. Thanks so much for emailing in to the Dumpster Fire chats, everyone. I'm going to get to your emails as soon as I possibly can. Email in at benk721@gmail.com. All right, Marcus, what a week it's been.
It's every week.
Has it been a week?
Every week is always what a week it's been.
This is exciting. I feel like my brain is living the career of Mick Foley when he was a Japanese death wrestler. And it was just like, I feel like every now and again I'm just getting slammed into a bunch of, M4s? Series of bombs and barbed wire and things like that. Basically, Donald Trump, of course, he ran on a platform of whining to get what he wants. Remember that? He's like, I whine. And that's how I get what I want. Well, it's time to put on a diaper as well, big baby, because your administration is leaking. It is unbelievable. People, there's a guy, Larry Sabato is his name. He runs a think tank. He's more of a conservative-leaning guy. He swears he's never seen anything quite like this in modern presidential politics, certainly not in the executive office. They just cannot keep a lid on the people who are around the president. And we were talking before the show, I think one of the problems is Obama holdovers. Mm-hmm. They have no loyalty whatsoever. Of course, that was Sally Yates, the former acting attorney general. She chose not to go ahead with his unconstitutional immigration travel ban, Muslim ban, and she was subsequently fired. But she knew what she was up to. It was basically a resignation letter. We have a lot of Obama holdovers who have no loyalty whatsoever to Donald Trump or Steve Bannon or anybody in that in the executive level right now. And then, of course, we also have Steve Bannon, who is keeping a different circle of friends than Reince Priebus is keeping, the Mitch McConnell Republicans, the more status quo Republicans. So we have three different factions right now working under Donald Trump, but they're not working together. And the leaks, this faucet is dripping, and this entire apartment is about to be flooded.
Well, nobody's working together in this administration.
Not one person.
No one's working together. Nobody's talking to each other. That much is apparent just from the whole Michael Flynn mess, how that whole thing was rolled out. Kellyanne Conway is completely out of the loop on everything.
Well, Kellyanne Conway, of course, I'm sure everyone already knows this. Former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn he technically resigned as well.
Technically.
Donald Trump just couldn't. He loves to fire people on TV when they can't sell a Maybelline product quite right. But if a national security advisor has secret conversations with a Russian ambassador and then lies to the vice president of the United States, that vice president being Mike Pence, Donald Trump just has a hard time pointing his fingers into the shape of a gun and saying, "You're fired."
Well, he didn't even do it until it was leaked. It was 3 weeks. They knew for 3 weeks that this was a fact. This is not something that is unsubstantiated. This is not a rumor. It is a fact that they knew for 3 weeks that it was a fact that he had spoken to a Russian ambassador about sanctions, had told Mike Pence he had not talked about sanctions.
Yep.
For 3 weeks they knew this, and it wasn't until a leak showed that they knew it, showed that he had done it, that they finally got rid of him.
Well, and the interesting thing is, I was on Kennedy yesterday talking about this. Michael Flynn, he was a very controversial figure to begin with. In 2014, Barack Obama fired him, and now, of course, he's forced to resign, basically fired by Donald Trump. He's basically the Keith Olbermann of national security advisors. He cannot hold on to a job. It is so what happened was November 8th, Donald Trump is elected. In December, they start talking about the Russian hacking into the election. So Barack Obama said, we're going to get tough on Russia. And this is one of the great ironies when it comes to the Democrats and them being upset with Donald Trump's approach to Russia right now. Under Barack Obama, we allowed Russia to basically control the war in Syria. We allowed them to annex Crimea, and we allowed them to do whatever they want in Ukraine. So it wasn't as if the Democrats were extremely hard on Russia. But one of Barack Obama's parting moves, one of his final things to do was to establish sanctions on the Russians, which was more of a symbolic gesture than anything, because he knew for a fact, regardless if Michael Flynn was the national security advisor or not, Donald Trump would get rid of those sanctions. They came as a repercussion for them theoretically, meddling in our elections, right? So after that happened in mid-December, when Barack Obama put on the sanctions, Michael Flynn got on the phone, talked to a Russian ambassador, and promised those sanctions would be removed as soon as Donald Trump was sworn in January 20th, which was already sort of understood by the Russians. So the fact is, Michael Flynn lying about it was absolutely insane, because the Kremlin is more bugged than the Real World House on MTV or than the Kardashians' home. The Kremlin, everything is recorded.
Yeah.
It makes Richard Nixon's White House look like a panic room. Like no one's hearing anything. That's how bugged the Kremlin is. I mean, Vladimir Putin recently just murdered a political foe, as a matter of fact, because he had overheard some of the communications that the man was having inside the Kremlin. So the fact that he was not aware or just chose not to acknowledge the fact that those conversations were recorded, the audacity then to go lie to Mike Pence about the conversation, it's a total lapse of judgment. And I think it disqualifies him for being the national security advisor, regardless of the content of the conversation between he and the ambassador.
Exactly. It's not audacity, it's ignorance.
It's unbelievable.
Incompetence that he just didn't think. He just didn't think that they would find out.
I mean, I have I don't even talk to you and Henry on the phone without being like, this thing is tapped. The whole thing is bugged.
I'm very careful about what I talk or what I say or text or any of that type of stuff. Like it is, and this guy is, supposed to be
national security.
I know.
Security.
It's just national security. It's just kind of mind-boggling how dumb he is and how dumb all of these people are. Like, it is just, I mean, I think for the longest time, it just feels like a long time. For the last few weeks, people have been saying that, they're trying to do this tactic where they're going to flood us with information. They're going to flood us with outrage. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think it is pure and total incompetence. They just really, really do not know what they're doing.
Well, growing pains happen in all administrations. Of course, Barack Obama, he had Van Jones, who I believe was going to be an energy czar or a car czar, one of these czars when everyone was freaking out about the term czar, who was forced to resign because he had some ties with a far left group, or what a lot of people on the right considered a far left group.
Nothing compared to this.
Exactly. Nothing compared to this. But
that's a sneeze compared to britches full of shit. I mean,
yeah, it really is. And it's interesting now because Barack, we can say Barack Obama, George W. Bush, at this time in their presidency, they had roughly 65% to 75% competence. Like, the American people were like, well, they're going to be competent anyway because we want to believe in our president. This is sort of a rally around the flag moment. Nothing too atrocious could possibly go wrong in the first month of an administration. Donald Trump right now, Fox News, I was just there yesterday, are thrilled with him at 50%. 50% of the country says, oh, he might be okay in an emergency situation. He might be a fine leader, which is extremely low. That bar is extremely low for a president less than 1 month in to his administration. And of course, I think that poll came out right after the North Koreans. They've been testing a new ballistic missile, previously a submarine launch missile that they were able to launch from land. And if you get a chance to watch the North Korean missile launch, it's adorable. It is the little missile that could. Yeah. It barely works. And there were North Korean scientists just being like, if that thing doesn't start going up, we are dead. Get off the ground. And it did. And it's a solid fuel missile, which makes it less detectable. It went, I believe, 300 miles. It could go 1,200 miles. Either way, I think we really blow up the North Korean threat. They are far, far away from getting any ballistic missile that could reach the U.S.
Well, just as adorable was Donald Trump and the Japanese watching a video of that missile launch in the middle of a dining room in a country club. club in the middle
Mar-a-Lago.
These people, I don't get these people that were so insane about Hillary Clinton, about lock her up, about I can't believe she used how she used her own email server. When you've got this guy, Donald Trump, doing state business, international business out in the open, and also tweeting from an unsecured Android phone. I just do not get the cognitive dissonance with these people.
It is interesting, no doubt about it, and you wonder if all those things will come back to nip them in the bud if they're not, or nip them in the butt if they're not already, and I think that they are. Of course, he met with Shinzo Abe. That's the name of the Japanese prime minister, and so it was sort of a perfect situation for the North Koreans, kind of a 2-for-1. They got covered by the Japanese press, the American press, and both Shinzo Abe and Donald Trump got to watch the thrilling missile launch together.
Well, as far as it goes with the White House, nobody talking to each other, none of the agencies talking to each other. One of the reason why this is so amazingly dangerous when you've got somebody who is so extremely disorganized, one of the reasons why 9/11 happened was because the FBI and the CIA weren't talking to each other.
Yeah, that's very true.
The FBI had information about the hijackers in the United States. The CIA had information about the planning of the attack overseas. But those two agencies were in a dick measuring contest with each other, and they weren't talking to each other.
But strangely enough, they were trying to see who could get the smaller one, because the FBI and CIA, they both like covert operations.
But that's what happens when our security agencies don't talk to each other.
It's dangerous, and I think disorganized, and that's the key word. That's the operable word. Disorganization is a huge threat to national security.
Gigantic. It's the biggest threat to national security.
And that's why we have foreign leaders right now who are really just sort of able to manipulate and play. And we'll get into some of these people who could be taking over as national security advisor in a moment. But we have some of these foreign leaders who are really manipulating Donald Trump. For example, China's president, Xi Jinping. I believe I'm saying that mildly right. If I'm not, I apologize. But he's now going for the one China policy. For example, he had one phone call with the president of China, and now they're going with the one China policy as opposed to the two-state. Not the two-state solution that's involving Israel, but the two-state relationship between Taiwan and China. So it's really interesting how he's able to just turn in just mid-step and pivot 180, and that is because he has no actual fundamental base. He has no intellectual base when it comes to political theory or foreign policy.
He has no knowledge whatsoever. He's just whatever people tell him, that's what he goes with.
Which is really dangerous. And with Benjamin Netanyahu, who he met with today, now he encourages them to stop with the settlements, but he also said the Israelis that is to stop with the expansion of the settlements. But then he also says perhaps the two-state solution isn't the only way to go. So he's talking out of both sides of his ass. I would say mouth, but these, his thoughts are worthy of talking out of an ass.
Yeah.
So it's really fascinating when he actually meets with these politically savvy leaders who have experience. They're just running all over him.
Yeah, and not only that, as far as it goes with him not having any sort of knowledge base, I mean, you can absolutely trace what is said on Fox News to his tweets. He's just taking what people are telling him because he has no actual knowledge. So he's like, oh, maybe I should bone up on this. And so he's just taking what people are telling him, but he also doesn't remember what he said the day before.
Well, and that goes to a leak from February 9th. We'll go through a few of these leaks here. It was a Reuters report. It says, according to a current and former U.S. officials, Trump asked aides what the START treaty was during his conversation with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. So he didn't have the, I guess, the intellectual. He just doesn't want to explore.
No,
he has no desire for knowledge or to if you don't want the START treaty is a strategic arms reduction treaty. It's 101. Of course, again, he didn't know what the nuclear triad was, but that was the first debate over a year ago now. You figured he would have boned up a little bit or just had some thirst for knowledge. When you're these are kind of exciting, fun things. You're dealing with nuclear weapons. If you're this should be a kid in a candy store. If you're the president and you don't want to talk about nuclear weapons, what the hell are you doing there?
Well, he loves talking about nuclear weapons, but all he's concerned in is how much destruction they can cause. That's all he wants. That's all he cares about. He doesn't care about any of the non-proliferation treaties. All he cares about is how big boom go.
And it is kind of exciting because how big does boom go? I like it.
That is
I'm
exciting.
just saying.
I understand where he's coming from. That is exciting. But God damn it, he's the president of the United States here. He needs to know these things, especially if he's going to swing his nuclear dick around as much as he has been. He needs to know this stuff.
Absolutely, because it is dangerous if he doesn't, and if he is perceived as, and this is why he's being perceived as weak, because he's uninformed, and knowledge is power, and he does not have it, and hence he does not currently have the power. February 5th, there was a leak from the New York Times, and this is where I have to say it's regarding Sean Spicer and how Donald Trump watches every single press conference that Spicer gives, and we talked about this on the last episode. I would not in a trillion years want to be Spicer.
No.
It is a nightmare position. I actually have some sympathy for him because he is trying, as we talked about earlier, with the different factions within the White House right now. There is no singular voice, there is no singular opinion, and there is no actual plan. There is no plan that everyone can get behind and be on board with. So Sean Spicer at 2:30 p.m. or 3 p.m., by the time he takes to the podium to meet the press, they have 5 different theories or 5 different conversations happening coming from the same White House, and he's sitting there, trying to volley them as if you go into batting practice and the machine that spits out the balls haywires, and it's just throwing 30 of them at you at once. I mean, it's a nightmare for this guy. Granted, he took the position, and many people have it much worse off in life, such as the DACA kid who was just arrested and will be deported because he allegedly was in a gang.
Yeah. Well, I think every single person in the White House right now is miserable. Nobody in there is having a good time. I mean, I think one Time magazine reporter said that the staff radiates misery.
I could imagine that.
Yeah.
I thought they were supposed to radiate winning.
I mean, did you see Conway on the shows on, what was it, yesterday morning? I mean, she looked so tired. I mean, just had no sleep whatsoever. And of course, she complained about not having any sleep because if there's one thing this administration loves to do is they love to talk about how hard everything is.
I know. It's really hard on them as families are getting ripped apart in a roundup that again, Barack Obama deported more people in this country than any president in history. But it's nice the press is finally covering these deportations. But that, regardless if Obama did it or if Trump did it, it's still not right. What's happening right now regarding our immigration policy domestically. Kellyanne Conway, yes, I do have a little sympathy for her because of the nightmare world that they are living in. I want to go back a little bit when it comes to Michael Flynn. Some people are saying that he violated this Logan Act. Mm-hmm. The Logan Act was put in place in 1799. It's never been used before. I don't even think anyone knew that it was on the books until someone probably just Googled it.
It was pretty obscure. Yeah.
It's pretty obscure. So, I mean, yes, maybe he could be prosecuted under the Logan Act, but I absolutely don't think so, especially, again, because of what you said earlier, Marcus. Donald Trump still calls him a wonderful guy.
Yeah, he came out in a press conference and said he is a wonderful guy. Let me see exactly what he said here. He said, I think he's been untreated very, very unfairly by the media, as I call it, the fake media in many cases. I mean, this whole fake media, fake news thing, like, it's starting to make all of us look bad. It doesn't just make him look bad. It just doesn't make him look weak. It makes our country look weak. It makes us look like a country of whiners, a country of people that cannot possibly take any sort of... I mean,
this is what foreign dictators say.
Yeah.
When they don't get the press they want, they call it fake news. And if Donald Trump had his way, if we didn't thank God, for Roosevelt going for the 3 terms or whatever, at least we don't have he doesn't have the ability for limitless time in office. Because if he did, he would legitimately murder these people. You can get the feeling, they would send him, to go face the wall and put a bullet in the back of their heads. That's the slippery slope that you start going down. And I mean, obviously that's a bit of an exaggeration, but that is the slippery slope. Once the leader of the free world starts criticizing the press, delegitimizing them, and granted, I mean, the mainstream media hasn't done themselves many favors. They have gotten many, many things wrong, and they are biased in their own ways. But the way that he goes after news outlets that just don't report what he wants them to report is is really dangerous.
Well, this is what he said 9 hours ago. I mean, 9 hours ago, he went on a bit of a tweet storm. He said, the fake news media is going crazy with their conspiracy theories and blind hatred. MSNBC and CNN are unwatchable. Fox and Friends is great.
Fox and Friends is where Kellyanne Conway, of course, got in trouble with the ethics committee. She is now being investigated because she did tell everyone to go buy Ivanka Trump's line of wonderful dresses at Nordstrom's and get there soon because they are flying off the shelves. Not because people are buying them, because they are being removed by janitors who make minimum wage.
Well, actually, speaking of Kellyanne Conway and MSNBC, Mike Brzezinski banned her from being on Morning Joe.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
She's been banned from Morning Joe.
She's been totally banned from Morning Joe because he said that she just can't be trusted to be truthful, which is...
She's extremely unreliable, obviously. Yeah. And again, I think she's in over her head. There is no message. There is no memo that these people have to keep them on script. It's fly by the seat of their pants. So it's not entirely their fault. It is a representation of Trump. It is a representation of Bannon. It's a representation of the chaos that is currently going around in the Oval Office. All right, so another leak here is the Washington Post reports that U.S. intelligence agencies taped conversations between Flynn and the ambassador. That came out on February 13th, as we talked about at the top of the show, and that is why Mr. Flynn is no longer the national security advisor. So there are a couple of replacements that have been tossed around. There's one dude, Vice Admiral Bob. Currently, it is being held by Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, who was a top advisor to Trump, and now he is currently the national security advisor. But most people think that is a transitional position, and he will be ousted for either Vice Admiral Bob Howard. He's a former deputy commander of U.S. Command, and he served on the National Security Council under W. And then one of the great ironies of this entire thing, one of the other main options, and it might not be either of any of these three people, we don't know, but these are just the names being thrown around. David Petraeus is being thrown around as well, and of course the great irony is he was ousted in 2012 for sharing secrets with his biographer, Paula Broadwell, and he had I believe it was a $10,000 fine and 2 years probation. Anyway, maybe not the best guy to follow up Flynn.
Yeah.
Petraeus.
Yeah.
Who was actually found guilty.
Found guilty of
the exact same thing.
Actually sharing classified information. Of course, again, everyone, Hillary with the emails saying, I can't believe that there was the possibility that classified information could get out. Petraeus actually told his biographer / mistress classified information. He was found guilty of it. And now they're saying that this person could possibly be the
national security advisor. If you can't be honest with your mistress, though, then what kind of guy are you? So those are the three names: Howard, Kellogg, and Petraeus, that are currently being tossed around to fill this position. And Donald Trump, of course, he has been now. Putzer is officially out. They won't be doing a hearing for him. He's having a hard time finding people to trust, and he's having a hard time finding people to fill these positions because he refuses to hire people who said negative things about him in the past, or who he's just very sensitive to when people are mean to him. So he only wants to keep yes men around, and that's going to greatly limit his options, and it's going to really, at the end of the day, hurt the country, hurt our security, and hurt his entire administration. You got to put the primary cycle, you got to put the entire election behind you, and just hire the best people for the job. Speaking of people that he is currently speaking with now, that they had a small feud, and although this man, he loved Donald Trump, and he wanted to be Donald Trump's number one friend the entire time. Of course, we're talking about chubby big boy himself, Chris Christie. He is now meeting with Donald Trump. He met with him on Valentine's Day, and I think he's in a good position because Trump's administration is in shambles and it's so chaotic. Chris Christie, with governance ability, understands what a government needs to look like, understands the ins and outs. Really, it's just clerical, boring work that Donald Trump has no desire to learn, nor cares, to enact. He met with him on Valentine's Day, apparently to discuss drugs. So Chris Christie, the man who's morbidly obese, the man who is without a doubt diabetic, is going to possibly be in charge of the war on drugs when it comes with, and of course, that is with Jeff Sessions. And as the Attorney General. So that could be a waking nightmare.
Yeah.
Chris Christie, of course, notorious for being extremely hard on marijuana in New Jersey. They tried to legalize it for medical use, which I don't believe it's legal right now in New Jersey for medical use. And it was extremely difficult for them to pass any legislation whatsoever. People were literally dying sick. Chris Christie just did not care because this person who obviously can't take care of himself feels as if the government has the right ideas when it comes to human health and when it comes to individual liberty concerning what you put in your body. So that's where Donald Trump is going right now, and he's desperate to try to right this the ship, and we'll see if he's able to do it. I mean, it's less than a month in. It's just what has to happen. He has to get his cabinet choices through, which are just going to become more and more difficult to get through. Again, Puzder is gone. He's out. This is going to be a huge endeavor.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if they're going to be able to pull it off. And they're certainly not going to be able to pull it off without the support of the Republican establishment. And what happens with someone like Michael Flynn, what's going on right now with Donald Trump's philosophy and overall opinion of Russia, it totally contradicts everything the Republican Party has stood for forever.
Yeah.
Ever since the Cold War began. Ever since World War II was done and the Cold War started, the Republican Party has been against Russia.
Yeah.
And so we have Mitch McConnell, and Mitch McConnell all the way down. The Republicans, this is more important to them than his economic policies, than some of his, let's call it flamboyant language, his desire to tweet, all these kinds of things. The thing that pisses them off the most, in my personal opinion, is what he's doing with Russia and just completely throwing out conservative principles when dealing with a foreign foe. So I don't see him getting the support of the Republican establishment. Obviously, the Democrats are realizing that they cannot go along with anything that Donald Trump wants to put forward because their constituents are livid.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw what happened recently when the Republicans went and started doing a bunch of town halls. It was like our show in Chicago for the last podcast on the left. I mean, everyone was screaming, but it wasn't screaming. They weren't screaming any positive things. That's for sure.
Yeah.
People are just they're extremely pissed off. The Republican establishment is also pissed off because there is no replacement that they deem worthy right now for Obamacare, for the Health Care Act. I don't think that Donald Trump has his heart in replacing it, which I believe will also mean he won't repeal it. So, I mean, I don't see where his allies are. It's already shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and he didn't have a large circle to begin with.
Yeah. Well, as I've said before, America is an ongoing experiment. A lot of people have said that. That's what America is supposed to be, is that we are a governmental experiment to see what works best. And I think with Donald Trump, we tried, let's see what happens if we put a guy who has no experience whatsoever in government in the highest seat in the land.
Well, the last time we did it was Harry Truman.
Well,
and we had two big things that happened with Harry Truman, which hopefully don't happen under Donald Trump.
Truman had some experience. Truman didn't have a lot of experience, but he had some experience. And Truman fucked things up pretty fucking bad. But we
yes
said,
and no. We could argue that.
We could argue that, but I would argue that Truman he had bad people around him. But this is what happens when you put someone with no experience in government whatsoever at the top. It doesn't work. We tried it. It got tried. It's not working. In fact, it is proving to be a gigantic disaster, and it needs to change before something truly terrible happens. Because it's like I said earlier, 9/11 happened because the FBI, among many other reasons, but one of the big reasons was because the FBI and the CIA weren't talking to each other. Donald Trump's administration is an absolute and total mess. I'm not saying that another 9/11 is going to happen. I'm not going to say it's going to be that bad. But what I am saying is that a security force, a country's security only works when everybody is talking to each other.
Yes, that's very true.
When they stop talking to each other, when there is no organization, when there is no management whatsoever, it does not work. And I am so afraid that there's something terrible is going to happen, and he's going to use it to his advantage.
Well, as we talked about in the last episode with you and I, of course. I mean, he's definitely going to use anything that he can use for his political advantage. But, the thing is, they are not talking to one another, but they are talking to the press. So we are getting a lot of information that we don't necessarily get from other administrations. For example, we found out when Donald Trump on February 1st, he spoke with the Australian Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, and he said it was the worst call. The Washington Post said that this person, his secret senior official, said it was the worst call by far. He hung up on this guy within 20 minutes. They were supposed to talk for an hour. Absolutely insane. And then there's more details coming out regarding his conversation with Mexican President Enrique Pena, talking about what a nightmare that is. There isn't any secrets whatsoever in this White House. And I think that continued erosion of trust amongst the people in the White House, it's just going to end with him and Steve Bannon staring at each other in the corners of the Oval Office, and it's going to end like the movie The Thing. I mean, that's really, who else is going to be around? Everyone's going to be completely destroyed because no one will be trusted whatsoever.
No. There's no trust. I don't see how anybody trusts. I mean, the hardcore Trump fans are, it's pretty fascinating to watch. It's really fascinating to watch them, like how they're able, because they're saying that they're twisting Michael Flynn as being a hero, that he became a lightning rod for the president, and so he selflessly fell on his sword, that he didn't really need to, that he didn't actually do anything wrong. But because the media turned him into a lightning rod, he fell on his sword. And that takes, that's some pretty intense mental acrobatics there. Well,
as we talked about on the last episode, we currently have a Republican, we have conservatives in the media who are absolutely insane for not recognizing the hypocrisy of going along with Donald Trump, basically equating the United States to Russia, talking about a Leninist in office with Bannon, who is a proponent of Saul Alinsky-like tactics. It is quite interesting to see them slowly find themselves in a position where they will not be trusted again.
Yeah.
They're a lot of people said if Donald Trump did not win this election, the Sean Hannitys of the world, to some degree Alex Jones, they would be done. And I think his victory just sort of prolonged their ultimate demise.
And it's going to make it a lot larger.
Absolutely, because then they can't
Alex
speculate.
Jones is going to self-destruct.
Alex Jones is Alex Jones. He can do it at chemtrails, But yeah, you're right, because, theoretically, if he wouldn't have won, they could have been like, look at everything that Hillary did wrong. This is what Trump would have done right.
Yeah,
but we actually get to see it.
Yeah.
So this is, and back to your point regarding, this being an experiment, it is good to see people engaged, active, going to town hall meetings again.
Yeah.
It's good to see the press covering immigration and deportation. It's good to see some of these outlets that were pretty much muted during the Obama administration because they liked their politics or because, they had a vested interest in Barack Obama's success. It's good to see them wake up and actually cover, reality in the news again. So there are some positive things, and I am still optimistic. I don't think that, the world's not going to burn down under Donald Trump. However, it is very real what's happening, and his actions have real world ramifications, and seeing them, seeing what they look like on the ground it's fascinating, and there's just more to come. Again, they got their first DACA kid because he had confessed to being in a gang. The sanctuary city, cutting the sanctuary city funding is going to happen. That's going to have real world ramifications on social programs, education, things like that. And then, of course, now again going back to Chris Christie and drugs, and Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, hard line on drugs, completely against the legalization of it. Is the federal government going to start cracking down on Colorado? In other states that have legalized marijuana. We just don't know what's going to happen because this is just 1 month in, and they're moving at such a breakneck speed with they need to have a stopgap. There needs to be somebody in there that's just like annoying and just like, let's hold on, guys. They need one nerd who is just like, guys, can we just hold on? And everyone says, you're dope, Howie. You're a dope, and you're a loser, and you have no friends. But that person is needed.
Yeah.
And they don't have any voice like that. And if they don't have any, they're just exhausting themselves so early on, wasting all the political capital. They have 100 days. That's what, that tends to be the standard of like, you can pretty much get anything you want done in the first 100 days of an administration. That's when Obama passed the Health Care Act and a series of other things. And Donald Trump I think he's already burned all of that goodwill.
Yeah.
The Republican establishment is horrified. They're like, how the hell do we get this guy? How do we get him out of here? How do we handle these next 4 years? The Democrats are realizing that if they voted, for example, I believe it was Elizabeth Warren that voted Ben Carson for HUD. She never heard the end of it. These Democrats are like, they're in a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
I just don't see the coalition. You have to have a coalition inside of the government in order to get anything through. The only coalition he's building is the 2/3 it's going to take to impeach his ass.
Yeah.
And which, of course, doesn't really get rid of him anyway. But because, Bill Clinton was impeached. It's a much, much longer process. But it is, 1 month in, and he's about burned every bridge, that Chris Christie could shut down.
Yeah, because he does not know what he is doing. He does not know how government works. And he's showing that as hard as he possibly can right now.
But now I'm trying to think of something positive to say because we've been so mean to him. And now I can feel he's like getting sad.
Oh, we can feel it from here, can't we?
I talked about, he has a rule where he's no longer allowing lobbyists to be in his, to have conversations with his cabinet, but his cabinet is just full of lobbyists. Like I was talking about that on the dumpster fire. It's like Rex Tillerson, he doesn't need a lobbyist for Exxon.
No.
He's it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, okay, thank you for theoretically draining the swamp.
Here's something positive. He did a tweet. Thank you to Eli Lake of the Bloomberg View. The NSA and FBI should not interfere in our politics and is very serious situation for the USA. He told someone thank you.
That's very nice.
That's very nice. He was gracious to one person who kissed his ass.
I don't mind the 25% tax for lowering that for corporations, I suppose. And he said if you make less than $20,000, you're not going to pay any, I think it was income tax. That's good. Okay.
Well,
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Well, either way, it will be okay. We're 1 month in.
I just don't see how they can sustain this. Like that.
Well, you know what?
All of it seems completely and totally unsustainable.
It does. It really does.
Because an election is not a government. Like we kept saying that, I don't see how they can sustain this level of scandal. And they did. They absolutely did. But this is different. This is actual government. You're dealing with actual people that have actual jobs now. You're not just going for elections. You can't just move on to the next city and say another outrageous thing to cover up the outrageous thing that you said the day before. I mean, these are actual people that you're dealing with now and actual policies with actual very real ramifications. I just don't see how they can sustain it.
Yes, I'm trying to find the name of the guy that Rex Tillerson recommended for the cabinet, for an appointed position, who was absolutely extremely successful, and he is the one that Donald Trump turned down because he wrote a negative article in the primaries about Donald Trump, calling him unfit to be commander-in-chief. And the guy is totally reputable, completely, on the level. Tillerson wanted him, and Donald Trump said no because his feelings were hurt. So the name I was trying to think of, Elliot Abrams.
Yeah.
That was the guy that Tillerson recommended. And what was the position that he was recommended for?
Deputy Secretary of State.
Deputy Secretary of State. He is the one that criticized Donald Trump in the primary. And Donald Trump, despite the fact this man would do a fine job. I mean, of course, if you are liberal, I understand you're never going to like these people, but there are competent people on the right.
Yeah.
He would be a competent person.
I mean, as far as a Republican resume goes, he served under both Reagan and W. I mean, this guy has a resume, but anybody that had any sort of sense last year came out and said that this guy does not have the smarts to be president, and rightly so, as they're all being proved right.
Yeah.
And There are very few people who did not come out and say that, and it's like it just kind of stacks one on top of the other, because the people who said that Donald Trump were going to do a good job were people that don't really have much of an understanding of what goes on inside government. So he's putting those people inside government. They also don't know what they're doing. It's not, these things are, governments are extremely, especially the American government, is an extremely complicated machine. And you can't just plug in parts.
And we could sit here and argue far too complicated. Absolutely, I think it's it's a bureaucratic nightmare. The bureaucracy of Washington is atrocious, but it is what it is. Yeah, and you got to know how to navigate it.
Yeah, if you want to build a faster car, you hire a mechanic. Like, you hire an engineer. You hire someone who knows how a car works.
You can be like, but I don't want to, I want to, whatever, no cars at all. Maybe you want a moped or something. Well, either way, yes. So Donald Trump, they can turn it around. It's only a month in. And again, I want my president to succeed. It's just his policies at this point have, proven to be detrimental to national security. Which I think is an extremely important and valid argument that the right can make regarding the travel ban, regarding his immigration policies, and detrimental to the morale of the country. Yeah, and to what this nation was founded on, which is, of course, marijuana. Washington had a bunch of weed plants.
He did.
They were all hopped up on the sweet herb. Washington would love the weed now.
Hemp.
He'd be like, "Ooh, I can almost feel my wooden teeth," which was a myth.
Yes, it was.
He did not have wooden teeth.
No, he did not.
He was tired. I love that the precedent for 2 terms that he set before Roosevelt shattered it and forced us to actually have a constitutional law over it. He was just tired.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm done, and everyone else should be done because I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, you did a war in 2 terms. Fine.
Good guy. All right. And of course, Ivanka Trump, I do have to defend her. She was yelled at by her yoga instructor.
Oh.
And that was bad. That was all over Fox News.
Oh, was it? Because I didn't hear about that at all.
That story was big. In some circles, the Ivanka Trump getting yelled at by her yoga instructor story was bigger than the fact that the Russians are in the White House.
I can see why people love Fox News.
Well, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. Fox and Friends, as a matter of fact. It's early, but they feel like they look like they're drunk. Which is exciting. All right. Well, I think that's basically the news of the week. It changes all the time. So we'll try to, keep you up to date. I hope this wasn't too upsetting of an episode. I feel like we were a little bit hard, but I don't know what else to do at this point because we're seeing the policies and he's just inept. And I'm,
where we are.
Yeah. And I don't know, Hillary was everyone. It's tough to say. This whole election.
No, it's not. It's pretty easy to say.
No, but this election, I think this is what the country possibly needed.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a good wake-up call, and hopefully the Democrats get some new blood, and the Republican Party realizes they have to make a few changes to their brand to stop somebody like an insurgent candidate. Some people equate him to Thomas Jefferson. Some people, Andrew Jackson, they equate him to. So,
I mean, it's like most of the time it's so crazy it might work, does not work. And I think that's what America kind of went with.
Well,
like Donald Trump, it's so crazy it just might work, and it's showing an immediate problem.
Well, as we've seen with Dippin' Dots. The future of ice cream. No, that's not true.
Are you on Spicer's side now?
I am on Spicer's side with that, yeah. I have no ill will towards Sean Spicer. He's just trying to be the mouthpiece for a bunch of children, which is extremely difficult. And his opinion on Dipping Dots is right on. The future of ice cream. We're living in it. It's ice cream. But of course, if you think about it, it's so crazy it might just work regarding the Flying V from the Mighty Ducks. That did work. It did work. And that's good. Oh, we didn't even get to Kim Jong-un killing his brother. But I guess we just got to it. Kim Jong-un killed his brother with a super hot assassin. She was wearing a LOL was on her. I mean, you can't even make that. I'm not even sure if it's North Korean irony or if they legitimately think it's funny.
I don't. It may be. I don't know. I just you gotta respect a country that has a dictator that makes all of his decisions based on James Bond movies. Get the hot chick.
Yeah.
Get the hot chick to kill the guy.
Absolutely. And of course, going back a little bit to that North Korean conversation, when it comes to that 50% poll, for, 50% of the country saying that they think Donald Trump might be able to handle a national emergency. It was on the heels of that North Korean missile launch. And we do have, I think, roughly 128,000 U.S. soldiers throughout that part of the region that a missile could hit. Yeah. And if North Korea does launch a missile and they do kill U.S. Servicemen, that's an act of war. And really any of our allies, although Donald Trump has said that he does not care about our allies whatsoever. So I don't think that would be an act of war by his standards, but certainly if you kill our military. So, I mean, these are real life things. Yeah. And it's not just a joke, and it's not just about calling people liars and calling people tired and whatever else he said during the primary or crooked. These are real things. So anyway, that's the show for this week. We'll do another. I'll read some emails on the next episode, and then we'll be back here, and I'm sure we'll have God knows what do we even predict next week will bring. Maybe
next week.
Chris Christie is in the cabinet. That's my official position. Is Chris Christie has an official role inside of the Trump White House.
And you get a Chris Christie, Steve Bannon, Donald Trump triad, because they do need someone in there. If they're going to keep going, they need someone in there who knows how government works, or at the very least knows what government is.
What it is. Yeah. I mean, Chris Christie, of course, I believe he should be in jail for what he did with Bridgegate, but that's a whole nother story. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. Find Marcus Parks on Twitter at Marcus Parks, on Instagram at Marcus Parks. I'm at Twitter at Ben Kissel, and Instagram Ben Kissel 1. And and thank you guys so much for buying the t-shirts.
Yeah.
They're flying off the proverbial shelves.
Yeah, they are. Thank you so much. If you want your very own Abe Lincoln Stop Hat t-shirt with a skeleton, the skeleton of Abraham Lincoln puking out the American flag, go to cavecomedyradiomerch.com. He died.
Oh, he died?
He died.
All right, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.
For more shows like the one you just listened to, go to cavecomedyradio.com.